what helped the expansion of lending was the ability of banks to sell those existing loans onto other investors as a bundle of assets called securitized assets, and then use that cash to restart the lending cycle. This is a financial innovation called securitization, but it is not new and has been around for a long time. However, this process is not easy. Before those bundles of loans can be sold to other investors, they had to be seen as worthy investment by the prospective investors. Now, the prospective investors look at those bundles of assets and consider whether they are worth investing or not. For this, prospective investors look at what are called the ratings of these various assets, instruments, and these ratings are given by credit rating agencies such as Standard & Poor's and Moody's. These ratings effectively are a judgment by the rating agencies on the investment worthiness of those instruments. In this case, it turned out many such assets with high ratings awarded by the rating agencies later turned out to be much more risky than their ratings would indicate. Investors investing in securitized assets knew that there were risks. There were always chances that some of these mortgage-based securities might become worthless if the initial borrowers defaulted on their loans. So companies like AIG, American Insurance Group, would offer insurance protection against such credit defaults. These are known as credit default protection schemes. Now, this together was the recipe for taking big risks by giving loans to those people who were not really worthy of giving loans. And this is how most US banks started financing the housing finance boom in the US until it burst. If you reflect on the process we described earlier about the expansion of lending, it shows that managers of banks were entrusted by their principals, the shareholders, to manage the banks prudently, but they put their legally allowed remuneration interests ahead of overall risk they were creating, which brings into question the effectiveness of the remuneration committees in approving such compensation packages. Credit rating agencies failed in understanding the complexity and the risks of the securitized products they were rating. Insurance companies offering insurance for products that were inherently very risky also failed their principals. The net result is a crisis of confidence which has lingered on as lost trust among all stakeholders. This trust was built over decades but was destroyed in few months. Individual incentives and behavior cannot be ignored in analyzing the current crisis. Focusing on only macro variables will not yield a complete diagnosis of the crisis. Hence, remuneration policies and accountability will need to be factored into any new policy measures that the governments may consider. There is a simple but most powerful principle in economics, and it is the relationship between risk and reward. The remuneration policies in the banking industry simply violated this principle. While rewards were given in the short term, risks borne were of long-term nature. The accountability in future must be individualized. Private gains and private losses both should be captured in the managerial compensation deals. The rebuilding of trust is bound to be a slow process, and it cannot be simply achieved by more and international regulation. The present crisis has shown there were regulatory failures too, which need to be understood. More regulation, whether of national or supranational character, will suffer from limitations of competence and capabilities. Confidence in markets where prudent management is rewarded will be slow to build, but that would be more appropriate response.